Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a YouTube video podcast where we explore all things cinema. I want to welcome back to the show Alain Heim, who is one of Hollywood's most distinguished editors. Alain won an Oscar, BAFTA, and Eddie Award for All That Jazz. He was also nominated for an Oscar for Network. Alain began his editing career on Sidney Lumet's The Seagull and went on to cut Lenny, Hair, American History X, The Notebook, and many more. He has worked with the likes of Mel Brooks, Milos Forman, George Roy Hill, Nick Cassavetes, Martha Coolidge, John Hughes, among many other filmmakers, and he is currently president of the Editors Guild. Alain, welcome back. Great to have you again.
Nice to see you again, Robert. Robert, yeah.
we I
Okay.
think we I think we left off around Network last time. Your
Oh,
career is so big we could do 10 or 15 episodes, you know.
there's a few, yeah. Yeah, it jumps up on you somehow. This is the 45th anniversary of All That Jazz, I believe.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Is amazing to me, just that it's still here and that I'm still here.
Well, I watched it again the other night, and I mean, dare I say, I just feel it's like a perfect film. I mean, I've seen it so many times, and every time I see it, I always catch something new. There's always something to discover, I find. But
Yeah,
I absolutely love it, and we didn't we got to Lenny last time, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about All That Jazz and Star 80 a bit. But
sure.
I was just curious, was there challenges cutting All That Jazz? Was with all the different with the you got the music numbers, the film within the film with the comic. There's so many, challenges, I would imagine. It goes all over the place in a good way. So was that hard to cut or
Well, it wasn't that it was hard to cut. Whenever, in this case, I had done two projects with Fosse, three projects. Yeah, hold it. Yeah, I did Liza with a Z with Fosse,
Oh, right.
and then I did Lenny with Fosse. And this one was of course, about Bob, though he never really wanted to admit it. So the real tension there was my own tendency to refer to the character as you, and he would get pissed off about that. So we worked that out. It took a couple of weeks, actually. But the difficulty, any movie, Bob wrote this with Robert Allen Arthur with the intent of being able to do what we did on Lenny, which was sort of rearrange a lot of pieces. And that was written into the script. However, as always, when you're making a film, things change. And the difficulty here was being as flexible as we were on Lenny, to find things that have been removed. There was one long section that we removed, but for the most part, this followed the script. But the idea, we when I sat down with Bob, we worked from the beginning on the film and worked every scene until we thought it was good, and then continued to the next scene. So there was a very painstaking process involved. But the fact that some were musical numbers and some were not, it was pretty much baked into the script.
It's interesting that you would refer to the character as him, and that would annoy him. Do you know why that got under his nerves?
Well, no, I think no, I refer to the character as you, which
Right.
is yeah. So yeah, he said the first time I used that term, which was when Bob first came into the cutting room, and he said, "No, no, no, it's not me. It's Roy or it's Joe." But so many of the things were so accurate to his life. I mean, apart from my playing the editor in the film and the stage director playing the stage director and so on, uh, a lot of the people in the film were real people. When you work on a biographical movie, it's always touchy, but usually it's not the biography of the director himself. So this one had an additional trap to it, as it were. I mean, when you do a film, say on Lenny Bruce, you've got a lot of people who knew Lenny saying, no, that's not how he was. That's not the right thing.
Right, right,
And you can't beat that problem when you, because it's a different medium and it's not the guy's real life. It's a
right,
movie, I'd say.
right.
And that was, in fact, a movie based on a play. So it's, and in there was also a film in Lenny, there was also a book that had been written, a biography of Lenny called Ladies and Gentlemen, Lenny Bruce. And people were looking at that as a factual thing. Here, Bob was trying to be honest with himself, and I think he succeeded. A lot of people felt it was an ego trip, but I didn't. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, he did not treat himself kindly in that movie,
No.
and we none of us did. So
Right.
me, who cut it, I didn't treat myself very kindly. I took out a lot of my scenes, but I'm not very good at this. So anyway, yes, I don't know if that answered your question,
No,
but most
yeah, certainly. Certainly. The one thing I really like, another thing that I really, one of the performances I really like, which is small in the film, but Cliff Gorman, who plays, it's not, they don't say it's Lenny Bruce, but that's clearly the stand-up comic, the film within the film. Um, he was such an extraordinary actor, and I do believe that Cliff Fosse wanted him for Lenny because he did the
yeah.
play, but the producers wouldn't do it with him because he wasn't a star. Um, was that how you remember it as well? That he
Oh,
wanted Gorman? Yeah,
yeah. As I understand it, Bob did want Cliff Gorman to play the role in Lenny, but Bob always paid his debts somehow, so he felt bad about that. He therefore put him into this movie, into all that
yeah,
jazz.
right,
Same thing with a couple of the dancers. I mean, Bob had, in fact, there were other people too. There was oh no, some of it has been cut out, but Bob did hire people that he had worked with before, that he had some kind of relationship with before, and I don't want to get into that,
right.
but he paid his debts. I mean, it
Hmm.
was not, he felt he should have really fought for getting Cliff Gorman. The film couldn't have been made without somebody like Dustin at that time.
Right.
I'm glad it was made at all. Anyway, yeah, Cliff, that's a true story.
Yeah. Well, he was such a great actor, so I was glad he at least got to sort of play sort of play Lenny in this
Yeah.
film. But I read that originally it was Richard Dreyfuss in the role. But correct me if I'm wrong. But did you even tell Fosse you didn't think that was a great idea at the time?
Oh yeah, I did. The producer did. The associate producer, assistant director. A lot of us told Bob that we didn't think Richard was the best choice for the role. Um, and the first week of rehearsal, Bob let him go. That's, as I understand it, well, he tells a different story. But no, the first week of rehearsal, as I understand it, Richard was trying to direct some of the actors,
Yeah,
some of
that's
the
what I
guys.
read.
Yeah, and it's not a good thing to do for any director on any set. And certainly Bob just wouldn't have that. So
Mm,
he gone and we had to wait for Roy Scheider, which was quite lucky for us
yeah.
because Roy was a spectacular performance.
Oh, I completely agree. It's interesting that Scheider would have been someone in mind for it because at least you look at the films he did before, like Jaws and The French Connection, playing a lot of like really tough guys. I wouldn't have thought of him for it, but then when you see the film, it feels like he is this person. I mean, he's so perfect for it. So on paper, at least me, I would have maybe been more hesitant about Scheider than Dreyfus. But what was it about Dreyfus that you didn't think was a good idea?
Oh, I just didn't think he could do it. I didn't think he could be hard. I didn't think he could physically feel right. Bob was quite convinced he'd be able to do it, and then realized he couldn't.
Right.
But yeah, and Roy, did you mention Sam Cohn earlier, the agent? Or
No.
somebody, I think somebody else did to me just last night. Sam was Bob's agent. He was Jessica Lange's agent. He was the major agent on the East Coast, very important guy. And when Richard Dreyfuss fell out of the picture, we wanted immediately to get, I think at Sam's suggestion, we go for Roy Scheider. But Roy was doing a movie and couldn't get released. We tried, couldn't
Mm,
get released. So we were put on hiatus, the whole crew, which I guess was our second hiatus. But this one we all got paid for. Uh, Bob wanted to keep his team together.
right.
So paid, they made some arrangements. I was on half pay for however long that delay was. It was probably 2, maybe 3 months. And I wasn't going to go anywhere anyway because I loved working with Bob's.
Right.
An easy
Right.
one.
What when you say it was the second hiatus, what was the first? Was there another delay before?
There was, and I'm trying to remember why. I don't remember why, but there was another delay. Yeah.
Ah.
Um, I don't, the film took so long. Uh, people had, let's see, Chris Newman, the sound recordist, his wife had a child. The set dresser and Chris won an Academy Award for the film. The set dresser had a heart attack. He came back in time to pick up the second, when we started again, he was okay. And he won an Academy Award for the film. It was, we went through a lot of life things. Actually, Robert Allen Author, the co-producer and author, he died during our Thanksgiving break,
Right.
really suddenly of pancreatic cancer.
Mm,
Nobody had a clue about this, including I think Bob. So
wow.
that was a bit of a delay. That was not long, but yeah, it was a delay.
Did you ever meet the writer, Robert Allen
Oh,
Arthur?
sure, sure, yeah, no. He was from the golden age of
Yes.
television with Patty
Yeah.
Chayefsky and other people, and
Such a great writer.
yeah, no, lovely man, absolutely lovely man, and it was, just bad.
Mm, mm.
We
There,
felt about it. You would. It was family.
right, of course.
No, Bob
There,
was around.
there was there were when I was watching it again the other night, I realized I hadn't. I mean, obviously, it's this Jessica Lange's like this angel of death is pretty obvious that that's what she was, and as he dies at the end, as he goes towards her, but I never gave much thought as to why we see her from the beginning of the film talking to him, because that he's not even in the hospital until maybe an hour or an hour and a half into the film. So what was the idea there, or maybe this is just the way I'm
Oh,
seeing it, that it was like a premonition that subconsciously he kind of felt he was going down a wrong path with his life, the character.
well, he was certainly going down a path. I mean, if we're going to deal with the biographical fact of it, Bob had a heart attack when we were
Yeah,
filming Lenny.
right.
He told me that he never expected to live as long as he did. He said he had congenital heart problems in his family. So, um, yeah, this was he was always living with the character was always living with that conflict of life and death.
Yeah,
Yeah, death was always with him. He right away at the beginning of the film, he's rubbing his left arm quite a bit. I think even walking from the rehearsal, from the tryouts to the editing room in that little scene crossing Broadway, I believe he's rubbing his left arm.
oh yeah,
It's always there. And in
right,
fact, when he jumps off the stage, with that sudden motion, it triggers, I think, the first time we see Jessica Lange.
right.
I think so. So yeah, that was always there.
Like I said, because every time I see it, I see something new. And there was these really, I don't know if you would remember if this was in the script, but there was these very quick cuts right after the little rehearsal he has with his daughter in the rehearsal room, and then he sends her out to go see her mother, and she doesn't want to go.
Yeah.
And then he's alone, and he has this coughing fit, and it cuts very quickly to him in the hospital, and that hasn't happened yet. But again, it's almost like a premonition. It goes very quickly to him and then very quickly to Jessica. And then it goes to the routine in the morning, the It's
Yeah,
Showtime folks, and
sure.
back to him. And I thought, how have I never, I don't know, it happened so fast that I guess I maybe just didn't give it enough thought in the past. Was that also, were even those very quick cuts in the script, or was anything something that maybe, I don't know if you'd remember? I know it's a while back, but
Um, probably we came up with it in the cutting room. I mean, the thing, his waking up was part of the leitmotif, as it were, of the movie.
right.
And I don't know if you noticed, but in each sequence, the angles we used his become a little stranger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Near that one, near the end, he actually it's almost crow-like. I mean, just this black
Oh,
curved
the shot from behind him,
from
right? The low
behind.
shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was all very intentional
Right.
once we had the pieces. So, and Bob was a great user of mirrors. He loved mirrors.
Yes.
Sometimes I look at the shots and figure, where did they put the camera that we don't see? But every shot was always the reason I loved working with Bob was every shot was a little unlike what you would expect.
Mm,
Just a
mm.
little bit off center in some way.
Yeah, even as those the waking up in the morning and the showering and everything, the one of the later ones as he picks up the pill, I love that it's in slow motion. It's just that
Yeah, that
feeling of deteriorating.
yeah, we stuffed that in. That was not shot in slow motion, but we did a few things
Yeah.
like, yeah, it
Yeah.
just was good at the time.
No,
That's
it
my
worked. It worked beautifully. And another scene I love is the script reading with the cast, and the
yes.
sound goes out, and but then the sound of everything else goes up, like the breaking of the pencil and the stepping on the cigarette butt. um what was the I imagine the idea there was to really show his anxiety increasing over how this
Yeah,
process was going.
it's basically a panic attack.
Right.
And that's kind of, as we understand it, as I understand, Bob was very well versed in psychiatric things. He and Gwen were large donators to the New York like, psychoanalytic clinic, I guess.
Right.
And he, well, the original intention was to have the audience laugh, that is the rehearsing people laughing, and it never seemed real. And as much as so, we got rid of that as soon as possible. And we tried many different things, including having them listen to comedy albums and stuff. They basically did it best when they were just told to laugh
Oh.
without any without any prompt.
Oh, I
But
see.
yeah, but once they did it, it seemed not not enough. And we wanted to distort that, but we did a little bit and faded it out. And then it just seemed natural and real to go with these single sounds that you sort of focus on maybe when you're having a panic attack.
Mm, yes.
It worked very well. People talk about it
Oh, I
for a
love
while.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
thanks.
so effective. And another thing that really popped out to me last time was that I mean, obviously I heard it before, but I never given it much thought as to the fact that this one of the scenes that we see Joe editing is when the comic is talking about the process of dying, from acceptance, denial, bargaining. And then I love towards the end, as he's lost in the hospital, that we hear those same, we hear
Yeah,
those same. So again, it's it's that haunting element that he's always dealing with death, as
yeah.
you mentioned.
And
Uh,
we get closer and closer to it at that
yes.
time. Yeah, I think that that was a a late moment addition in the
Was it
track.
an addition? Okay, that's what I
I
was going to
think
ask.
so. I think
Yeah,
so. Because among other things, it was a long time to be on him with nothing happening. And
I see.
this to cement it
Right.
again.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that. And another, it's so funny. That's the thing about this film. You always see something is as soon as he goes to the hospital, there's a quick cut of Jessica, and she takes off the hat, and the veil.
Uh,
And at least for me, it was that, that impression of getting closer and closer and closer to the
yeah,
inevitable, you
that's
know.
exactly why it happened. Every working on a film with Bob was always a challenge for everybody because he made you want to give him the best work you possibly could. Not that people don't, as a matter of course, but in the case of Jessica's veil,
Yeah.
Bob wanted a fabric that would hang off the hat, but wouldn't drape. And there is no such fabric. I mean, you can't. But Albert Wolski, the costume designer, who also got an Academy Award, Albert really worked very hard to find a fabric that would do that. And eventually they ended up with tying it under her chin.
Oh, I
But
see.
yeah, to make some kind of you wanted to see her. At the
Right.
same time, you didn't want to distort her too much.
Yes.
So that was what was arrived at during
What
that.
you wouldn't happen to remember, was that also in addition, those quick shots of her, or is that on the script? I don't know if you remember, but
Oh, I don't know. The script. No, that kind of stuff was not written in the script.
okay.
The general, the rhythm of those cuts came in the cutting room. Uh, they were not. It depended on what the moments were and what the activities were on the part of the actors and where it felt right. Again, it was always
Mm,
a question of, what do we want to do here? And that's in this film, it was very important. Yeah.
right. Yeah.
And you can't write that in. You can
Well,
write
that's what I thought.
you,
Yeah.
you can write something like we'll intercut here, but you can't talk about the length or the rhythm of
Mm,
the
right.
pace of the shots. That comes in the room.
Right. That's what I figured, but it was so, it works so beautifully. I'm sure I know you've probably told this story a million times, but I know you said that there was some tension between the two of you, and he even threw an insult at you that you were a better cutter before you had a kid. Uh,
Yeah.
what do you know why he said, where this tension was coming from between the two of
Oh,
you? Or
well, again, the film was taking forever. And I suspect, yeah, this is just my surmise, but I suspect Bob must have been thinking, will I finish this film before I die?
ah,
So it took a really long time. In fact, um, um, Wolfgang Gladys he is the associate producer and the assistant director, and Wolfgang kept his his schedule book, because the schedule went at least twice over what it was intended to. The book
oh,
was gigantic,
oh
um,
wow.
and it changed all the time. So when we and Bob, usually a director will take a week off or so and let the editor try and get as much of the cut finished and in decent shape. In this case, Bob didn't want to take a break, and we all wanted him to take a break. The producer did. Uh, he wouldn't. He just wanted to come in Monday. They finished Friday. He wanted to come in Monday, and he did. So there was this real eagerness on his part. And it started, I guess, well, I don't know. He was very different than he had been on both Liza and on Lenny. He was not relaxed. Um, and when he said that to me, and it's pretty much a quote of what he said to me, "You were a better editor before you had a kid." I came home that night and I said to my wife and my kid, who was much too young to appreciate it, but
All right.
she was barely a year old, maybe not even. Oh, not even. And I said, I have to find a way to change the rhythm in the cutting room because if he's going to be abusive to me, I didn't want to be in that situation. I also did not want to leave this picture because I knew that it was going to be spectacular. I just, I had seen all the dailies by that time and
Mm.
put scenes together, and it was not something I wanted to be separated from in any way. And the next morning, I had an opportunity to change the rhythm, and luckily enough, instinctively enough, um, I was able to do it. We came to the first scene with me in the movie, the editor, and Bob wanted. I'm supposed to raise my eyebrows in the scene when he's sitting next to me at the cam and coughing. He starts a little cough, and he always coughed, both in real life and in the movie. So I was supposed to raise my eyebrow, and Bob did 5 takes consecutively of me on the set with no slate, just one slate. And he kept saying, which was his standard direction, he kept saying, smaller. Well, I have big eyebrows, and by the fifth take, my eyebrows were up here like a Chaplin villain. They were gigantic, and they were much darker then. So Bob saw me. I had cut the scene using my first take, which was the smallest. And Bob said, could I see the other ones? I said, you're not going to like them. And he said that he got angry at that, which was part of the whole rhythm thing. And I said, oh, and so he looked at the other takes and he walked across the room and he kicked a wastebasket, which was unlike Bob, very much unlike him, at least in the editing room. I had never seen anything like that. He kicked the wastebasket and he said, how could I let you do that? And I said, Bob, I'm not an actor. And he turned to me and he said, but you're a human being, and I should be able to get a better performance out of a human being. And I said, Bob, that's the nicest thing you said to me in the 2 weeks we've been here. And he broke up. He absolutely broke up. And after that, it was
Yeah,
back to the relationship that we both could deal with.
I love that.
It was, an editor is often between the director's vision. That is, the director thinks he shoots something. And yeah, he does. But in the cutting room, things change. So the editor's position is between what the director shot and what the director actually thought he shot. And Bob was really good at getting what he wanted on the film, but still, it was always that difference. So the editor is walking a tight line, a
Right,
narrow,
right.
tight rope, mixed a metaphor there. So, you have to be able to basically, you're carrying out the director's vision. An editor is always carrying out the director's vision, but you try and also make it the best it can be.
Hmm.
And the only way to do that is work closely with the director, and you can't work under tension.
Right, of course.
At least I couldn't. I never could.
And are those now when you how is it that at least with Fosse you come to know his vision for something? Is there discussions beforehand or is it just by being in there together during the
Yeah, well, I
cutting?
had done 2 projects with him,
Right,
Liza with a Z, where I learned an enormous amount. And then Lenny, which I guess we talked about, but um, when I suggested that we could make Dustin's performance harder by intercutting more of it than what was in the script, Bob said, "Go ahead, try it," because he
right.
was really unhappy with Dustin's performance, and I did. He liked it, so we began to feel really comfortable at that point. Not just doing what's in the script and doing what's bidden, but doing what's good for the movie. And so I felt comfortable, and I know his vision was always going to be unique, and he always had to be uh, expressing it in the film, and I had to do the same.
Right. How much do you want someone like Fosse or anyone in there with you while you're cutting it, or does it vary
It
director by
varies.
director?
It varies, but most editors, me too. I mean, I like to be able to make the cut and then go back and make it better.
I see.
We did that on film, which seems harder and harder to believe, but we didn't do it on electronic editing devices. Everything was physical. And nowadays you can try things, you can move things around, takes almost no time. But on film, it was much more difficult to do that.
Mm,
So you have to be a little firmer in your decisions.
right.
And that,
Oh, I see. Yes.
yeah, yeah. I mean, to make a decision very quickly is something very valuable, I think, for an
Mm,
editor. You can't you can't spend a lot of time feathering cuts to make them the smoothest they can be. You just try and get to the heart of the performance and the heart of the story.
hmm. Did
And I was
what?
fortunate, you working. I regarded Fosse as a genius and still do, and I did 3 films with the guy, and I wish
Right.
we'd another.
Yeah. Oh, me too. Me too. Do you know if he was going to? Was he planning anything after Star 80?
Yeah,
Oh, he was. Okay.
he was. Yeah, we talked about it. He wanted to do a film about Walter Winchell,
Oh,
who,
wow.
yeah, it's Winchell. For those who don't know, was a very influential columnist, mostly in show business. And then he became a very strong political figure, mostly in the conservative
Right.
and very strongly anti-communist. But he also was involved in show business. He was a womanizer. There were a lot of common points.
Right.
And I thought that would have been interesting, really interesting to work on.
Yeah.
And then Bob died. So that's not
Yes.
going to,
Unfortunately. Do
yeah.
you remember how you reacted to finding out about his
Nah,
death?
not well. I mean, I was on a film. Uh, I was on a film in Vermont for Warner Brothers and George Roy Hill, and every day I talked to the post-production supervisor, and that morning he called me early, and we had been friends for a while because I had done some other films for Warner Brothers, and he called me early and said, he commiserated with me about Bob's death, and I hadn't, of course, known about it. So it was quite a shock to me at that point. I didn't
Oh,
have, I hadn't gotten the paper that day, and I don't think there were paper. I don't think I had a cell phone. No, I don't think cell phones existed.
no, because that was 87, right? So it would have been pretty
Yeah,
not many people would have had them yet.
yeah.
Right.
Um, so that was it was quite a shock to me. I don't remember my exact feelings. I just felt a tremendous loss.
Mm.
But
Did you know him well outside of working with him, or was it a
somewhat,
purely creatively relationship?
we no, we didn't hang, but we were sometimes at the same events. He invited me to some parties, and actually, the first time he invited me to a party, I was doing Lenny, and it was in the summer. He was having a cast party for the people on Pippin,
Ah, yeah.
and it was out in Quogue where he kind of rented a summer house, and it was a day-long party with uh, you know, um, a seafood bar, and it was a very generous party. I met Patty Chayefsky there for the first time, and it was also just into the evening. Nice things happened. I mean, Bob would, Bob would that party I particularly remember. Bob was dancing with Ben Vereen, who was in Pippin, and there were all the beautiful showgirls, and Bob danced with my wife and made her feel like she was the most important person in the room. it was just a generally a good atmosphere. He knew to throw a party.
Oh, I
I mean,
bet.
his rap parties and his cast parties were very, very terrific. Yeah.
Mm. I heard you say in an interview that with Star 80 being such, difficult material, it is for an audience to take, that you tried to find ways to soften some of the characters. When you say soften, what do you mean
No,
exactly?
well, no, not really. What happened? The film itself was a really hard film. It was a hard story. When we were finishing, I guess all that jazz, yeah, Bob came to me in the cutting room one day, right after lunch, and he handed me the Village Voice that had an article that I had already read about Dorothy
Oh
Stratton,
yeah, right.
and that the film is based on that article. And then he said, I want this to be my next movie. And again, you have manipulative guys and show business. And,
Yes, yes.
Bob wanted to direct, this is an aside, Bob wanted to direct Chicago as a film.
Oh,
And we were walking on Broadway one night, and he said he couldn't solve the problem. And I said, "You mean the problem of working the musical numbers into a story, into a script, as it were?" Because Lenny, which has a couple of musical things, a couple of stripper scenes and things,
yeah,
they, and all that jazz, well, has a lot. But these were not musicals per
right,
se,
right.
were stories. And Bob wanted to somehow change Chicago into that kind of a story, and he really couldn't figure that out. I never could figure out either. I didn't think the film was not nearly as good as the play because the play had a lot of I don't know how sex in it. I mean, it
Right.
was when I say sex, I don't mean it wasn't sexy, but it had a lot of sexuality,
Right.
which was Bob's stock and trade as a choreographer. And the film never really had that. And I think the version that's playing right now here in Los Angeles, another version of the show, which was Anne Ranking's version that was very successful, um, has the same problem. I think it's not quite
Mm.
gritty.
Oh, I
So
see.
yeah, and I mean, Star 80 was just tough from beginning to end.
Mm.
It was tough for everybody. They put the final scene where she's killed as the last day of shooting, and Bob really he threw blood everywhere on that set, fake blood. He really
Mm.
wanted to be gory. When we got to the cutting room, he realized maybe he had gone too far, and we found we could try and pull back, but it was hard.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very hard because of the way he shot it. But we did pull back a little because the producer there also, again, the same Kenny Utt, um, we tried to get him to back off a little bit on the gore.
Right. I see.
Yeah,
I
that's really
see.
the only scene that had gore in it, but we did
Yeah.
try. But the characters themselves just had to be what they are.
Right. Right. So maybe I misinterpreted when you had meant softening. I suppose you meant the gore, perhaps.
Yeah, at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, no,
Right.
no. We had no interest in softening the characters. And not,
Right. I see.
you know, Paul was not a likable character by any means.
No. God, no.
No.
God,
Eric
no.
Roberts, yeah. Eric Roberts he was so into the character that you'd run into him in the elevator and he was just asocial. Uh,
Oh, I bet.
the aristocrat.
Such an amazing performance. God, he
Yeah.
was so
Yeah.
good in it.
I was
Scary.
disappointed. People disliked the movie so much that it was not considered. And I think, for awards, whatever you make of Academy Awards and things like that. But I thought his performance was absolutely
Oh, I
superb.
agree. Yeah. I'm surprised it had such a bad reception because it's such a good film. I know Gene Siskel apparently had it in his top 10 though for the of
Yeah.
the year 83. But I suppose maybe people weren't ready for it. I don't know if that had because it had just
Well,
happened, right? I don't know if that
it
had
was,
anything to do with it, but
well, it always takes a couple of years for a film to get made after unless you're doing one of those potboiler television shows. But for a film to get made takes a while. So it wasn't, I don't think the real story was out there very much, but
Okay.
I was doing a film right after that on location. And I looked up, I was having breakfast in a cafe, and the producer was knocking on the window and he asked if he could come in and join me. And I had barely met the guy up to that point. So we sat down and he said, you seem like a nice guy. How could you work on such a vile movie?
Hmm.
And I didn't find it, I mean, it's not a pleasant story, but call it vile didn't seem right to me. It just seemed
Yeah.
to be, and I also think the craft that went into it, and it was just without the craft, it would not, without the cinematography. I hesitate to say the editing, but it was, and the performances, it was a really fine movie, and
Yeah.
it found its audience, but it's a little late. I mean,
Right.
it's a, yeah,
I had forgotten that it has that very similar structure with Lenny. I watched it again the other night, but with the interview cutting to the interviews, and we
yeah,
all know that they're both dead throughout, right? Just like
yeah.
with Lenny Bruce, and I thought that worked well. I mean, it moves very quickly, but it's very rich, at the same time. It's
Oh
really
yeah,
strong film, I felt.
yeah. The we opened with that shot of the highway
Hmm.
through from the other side of the real house. Bob liked to shoot in real locations, and the assistant director Wolfgang told me that when he went to scout that location, they hadn't fully, well, they had repainted the building, but nobody was living in it. And he said when he walked around in the building, uh, there were still bloodstains showing through the paint
Oh wow.
on the ceiling
God.
and on the walls. Yeah.
Wow.
So it was, it was a shotgun close range. It's
Oh
not
yeah.
too, yeah.
Well,
So it
like
was a Bob liked tough projects. Lenny was tough too.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that, that connection with all of them being about characters in show business,
Yeah.
and they have similar traits, even though they have their share of differences, but not being able to live without show business, which I find fascinating. And I read, apparently, whether it's true or not, apparently he said to Eric Roberts that he identified with that character that Roberts played, because he felt that if he didn't succeed in showbiz, he would have became this guy. I thought, wow, Jesus, did he really think
Yeah.
he'd be a killer like this guy? I don't know if he meant it literally, but
I probably didn't. I know I've heard that story.
yeah.
And he has worked constantly, still working all the time.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think he deserved a better career. Well, I mean, he doesn't seem unhappy,
No.
but I think he should have been a star
Yeah,
in
I
a
think so. Yeah. Perhaps maybe if he had come up in the 70s when those kind of characters were a little more embraced in the mainstream, that maybe he would have. The 80s was more of the blockbuster, and
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say it.
yeah,
The whole idea of anybody's career in show business is so ephemeral.
right.
And you go in with great hopes and you don't know where it's going to go. So much of it is luck and being in the right place at the right time, taking the right role for an actor,
Mhm. Mhm.
even taking the right role for an editor. The
Right.
your reputation. I was talking to one of the nominees this year for editing from France, and now he's a younger guy, but he's got quite a few movies, French movies under his belt, and now he's being approached by agents here in Los Angeles who they want to sign him and see if what they can do with his career. And he
Oh,
was
good.
asking me advice. I don't know if I have any. I mean, I would probably like to live in Paris and edit, but I'm here, so that's the decision he'll have to make with his wife and his kid and
Mm,
kids actually, and decide how to move.
right. It's
But
never.
Yeah, you get a nomination. It's not only good for having dinner for the rest of your life, eating out, but it also can be a very quick pickup to your career nowadays, particularly. We
Well,
are in a worldwide business. Yeah.
yeah. Was that win meaningful for you, the Oscar?
Of course, it was on many levels, but I at that point we still had two different unions here, and the East Coast and West Coast Union, they held on to the jurisdictions, which I thought was always we thought was always silly. When I say we, I was in New York at the time and living in New York, but most of my offers came from California, and I couldn't work out here. So when we were able to, I did eventually get into the union here and get permission to work, but and then we merged the unions, so
Right.
that made a big difference.
I see. I see.
But
Well,
I got a lot of my offers came after network. I got a ton of offers, and I
oh, I
take them.
bet. Yeah.
It's
Oh,
work for me personally, but yeah,
right. Right. Well, there's you've done so many great films. We can be here for hours, but I intentionally wanted to focus on the the rest of your Fosse relationship. So if hopefully you could come back sometime and we could talk more about the films you did with Nick Cassavetes and the likes. But thanks so
sure.
much again for coming back to talk to me more, and I hope we could do it again.
Okay, it's fun for me. I enjoy talking about movies, and yeah, I better at this point. That's all
Yeah.
I'm gonna be doing for the next several months, negotiating a contract with the producers who have
Oh,
come in.
is there something?
Oh yeah, that's the yeah. Every 3 years our contract expires, and this
Oh,
time,
right, for the
so with all the craft unions in
with the
California.
editors, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and not only editors, all sets and camera, everybody. So yeah, this time it's gonna be a tough negotiation, we think. We'll see.
Mm, yeah. Particularly with everything that happened with SAG and the
Yeah.
strike is
Yeah, we don't know how it's going to affect us, none of it, except it's very quiet out here now. The
right.
studios seem to be recalibrating. I'm sure you've read about it,
Oh yeah, it was, yeah.
how much they want to spend. I love the speech at the Academy Award by the director of American Fiction, where he talked about instead of putting $250,000 into
I
one
read
movie,
that. Yeah.
I mean, 250 million. Yeah, it's absolutely sane. And
Mm,
maybe we can get back to the way it was back in the 70s and 80s when a lot of
yes.
little movies were out there.
Yes, exactly.
Because, you go to the movies now and there's nobody sitting there for
No.
the movie, except for
Right.
the blockbusters.
Yeah.
Anyway, the new
Yeah.
business, it's exciting.
Well, I hope it goes well.
Me too.
All that negotiations
Yeah,
and
none of us want to strike, but
no, of course
you
not.
know, we want to do right by our members.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of pain still out there.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, it was a rough year.
Oh yeah.
Certainly. Yeah.
Many of my members haven't worked since almost the beginning of last year.
Wow.
Yeah, certainly from the middle of last year, it
God. Yeah.
slowed down terribly.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Well, let's hope for the best.
me
And
too.
like I said, let's do it again sometime and talk more.
Sure. I'm game. Okay, pleasure.
Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I want to thank all of my members on Patreon. If you're interested in becoming a member of my Patreon, head over to the link patreon.com/Robert Bellissimo at the movies for full details. Patreon is exclusive content that I create month in and month out. And as a subscriber, you are able to vote on polls and contribute to what I do on Patreon month in and month out. So head over to the link for full details. You can also leave a donation directly to my YouTube channel by pressing the thanks link, which you will find directly below the video frame. Just click on the thanks link and you can leave a donation there if you choose to. And lastly, if this is your first time here, please consider subscribing. It is absolutely free to do so. By pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movies logo, you will see it floating above my head in the top left corner. To your top left in just a second, just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes. Also, click the like button and leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this episode. Also, you can also share the episode. All of these things are what produce traction to my YouTube channel. So I appreciate you watching and thank you again. And I will see you in the next episode.